All right, Saints fans, welcome back. We have another bonus podcast. We have the duet here. First one was with Ian Howard of Saints Talk Podcast, and next up is the OG of the group, Kevin Washinton. So Kevin was the replacement for Adam. He's the upgrade for Adam. Adam's going to block me for that. That's okay. But we're happy to have Kevin on the show. I think this is your second time coming on the Busted Coverage Podcast, and we're going to have a little fun today and talk a little defense. So how you doing, Kevin?
Hey, what's up, man? What's up? I I don't want Adam blocking me, so
you can't see. I put you in a bad spot right to start.
Yeah, Adam, I love you. Yeah, I was texting Adam the other day. But no, man, thanks for having me on, man. Yeah, let's get into some football and hopefully I don't say anything crazy. So
don't worry. I got crazy covered, so you'll look sane by comparison no matter what you say. Adam's still mad at me because I told him episode 3 sucked, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I saw your tweet exchange, and I'm pretty sure you're blocked, but it's all good.
No, he's still following for now, but he gave me a warning. I like to toe that line. I have way too much fun doing that. I'm a child, but yeah, to Saints football. I kind of want to start with the position group that I think is going to have the biggest determination of whether or not the Saints have success defensively this year or not, and it's the defensive line. And we can start inside outside or outside inside. I'll kind of leave it up to you. But I'm really interested to hear your thoughts about that position group, and which players in particular you're really looking to look at this year.
Yeah, defensive line. I mean, obviously, if you guys listen to me on the Saints Talk Pod, I'm a defensive pass rush guy versus maybe a coverage guy. If there's a such thing, I don't really think there is, but if there's a little debate about what you think is more important. And I've always just kind of leaned toward the D-line. So, speaking to that group in general, I think it starts obviously with Cam Jordan.
Yep.
And, just him playing on the defensive left side, or is it the right side? I always get it confused. It's the defensive left side, if I remember correctly. But
yeah, he plays against the right tackle.
Yeah, and so it all starts with him being healthy all year, him kind of continuing to be the same player that he's been for the last, some people think the last couple of years, but I'll tell them, if you look at the last 3 or 4 years, maybe even 5, he's just been a really consistent, good player, and he's getting better. And so, I think obviously him staying healthy, him being on the field, him continuing to play as he is, and then you start looking at the other guys, and this is typically where the Sheldon Rankins conversation starts, right? Because he's the second best player on the D-line and arguably the second best player on the defense, depending on how you feel about Marshawn Lattimore any given season, or Demario Davis, maybe even Marcus Williams. So he's not going to be available initially. Obviously, he's got the torn Achilles tendon that he suffered in the Philly game in the playoffs last year. So who's gonna step up for him? Like, who's the next best pass rusher? And I think that's right now. I think you can look at David Onyemata and you can look at Marcus Davenport, right? And so one of those guys has to be better than they were last year. Ideally. And Onyemata is, he's someone that maybe doesn't get talked about a lot. He's not the pass rusher that Sheldon Rankins is, but he's a good inside pass rusher. And I don't want to say comparable, but he can play. If he's your starting 3 tech, I wouldn't necessarily call it a weakness. So I'm going to be looking for him to play better. Unfortunately, he's suspended for the first game of the season, but, I think they can be okay without him in the Texas game, the
Insert
game against the
Stephen A.
Texans.
voice.
Huh?
Damn it, David. Oh,
Yeah.
the get off the weed. I hate
Oh
Stephen.
yeah. Hey man, look, it was. I think he was shipping it from. That was a
Yeah,
very
no.
weird story. It was a very weird story.
I
So
that thing sounded like there was some entrapment or some snitching or something going on, but yeah, no,
yeah,
I,
yeah,
100%. I think he's a, I think you nailed it. Say he's not really a comparable player to Sheldon Rankins, but he's still a very good player. Um, people listen to our show fairly frequently. Will kind of know this, but I'm kind of big. And part of it is I work with analytics companies, so it's kind of a bugaboo for me. But when I look at player analysis, I always try to look at two things. You want to look at personal performance, especially counting stats, things like that. A lot of people bring up, Onyemata had 6 sacks last year. Sheldon Rankins had, I think it was 8, and try to say they were similar. But you also you have to look at their net impact. How did they impact the game around them? It's not just what you did on paper. If football could be quantified on a spreadsheet, it would be baseball, and it's not. Or at least it could be just quantified on a spreadsheet. Week one is going to be its own thing, and we can kind of talk about that a little bit later if we want to. But
yeah.
the one thing with Onyemata that I really want to see is with each successive season, the flashes from him come more frequently. And I'm not just talking about the plays, but the play style. He is kind of a newer to football guy, and he's one of those guys where every now and then he flips that switch that the really special defensive linemen have when they get nasty and they play with that edge, and like, not that they are hurting people, but like they're trying to hurt somebody. And it's a delicate line, to walk, but the best defensive, especially linemen in particular, they always learn how to walk that line. And the one thing from him I really want to see is that aggressiveness and that expectation to dominate. Like, you can't block me. If he
Yeah.
can continue his evolution mentally, his physical toolkit, I think he's a little bit more gifted than Akeem Hicks was. And obviously that, comparison partially comes from they're both from Canada, but also just like as far as frame and type of player, they are very similar. They're both freaky athletes for their size. He's got way too much agility for a man that big and strong. That ain't fair. He's got polar bear DNA somewhere back in the chain. But he's got that power. And Sean Payton historically really seems to be a guy who likes power defensive players. And I think part of it is power is one of those things that doesn't age. A speed rusher, they're going to have the flash plays and they're going to get to the quarterback, and sometimes like it's just going to happen where you can't do anything about it. But power doesn't age, and power is always there. And power players you can play with technique and leverage throughout the course of a game and throughout the course of a season, they're going to hurt you more. Now, a speed player who can play with power, that's where you get to the Sheldon Rankins, who can do both. And my opinion, obviously, this is not the most brilliant insight of all time. He's I think he's the biggest wild card on the defensive line, way more than Davenport. We'll talk about in a minute. The Achilles used to be the kiss of death. We've seen a few players, in basketball and in the NFL in particular, which are really the two of the big four. Those are the two sports where you have the most explosive movement laterally and vertically, where that's going to have the greatest impact. And we've seen players come back from that injury like we've never seen before. So my question for you is, if he comes back and he's 60% of Sheldon Rankins, what does that look like, and what do you think it does for the D-line? And if he comes back and by year end he's 100% of Sheldon Rankins, if he's the same guy he was last year, what does that do for the defensive line and your viewpoint on it?
Well, if he comes back and he's 60% of Sheldon Rankins, then he's not going to be on the field. because I don't know if there is a defensive lineman in the NFL where if you say for instance, as good as Aaron Donald is, if he's half as effective, then he's not Aaron Donald, right? He's because when you take away a guy's explosiveness and some of their traits, that's kind of what make them who they are and what they are.
Oh yeah.
So
And just real quick, I kind of clarify. I don't mean like a raw 60%. Like, I mean from like a productivity standpoint. So like half of Aaron Donald is like a 10-sack defensive tackle who like gives up a good run every now and then. Yeah, not like a literal. I should have clarified that. Not like a literal.
Okay,
you're 60% of the player, but like
you're having
60% of the performance.
Yeah, I got it. I got you. Well, if he's 60%, then I still don't know how much he helps you. I mean, if you look at him, if you look at his just raw analytics, and his statistics last year, he wasn't ridiculously more productive than Onyemata. I mean, it was maybe I think it was maybe 15-20% more productive statistically. So, you're looking at a significantly less effective player than what you have than you have as a starter. And I would say that you just need to get him back a little bit. He's not up to speed yet. Now, part of that may be he's just again getting up to speed where his, maybe his body is there, but his, he's not moving, his muscle memory is not kicking in yet. And that may be the case. And so you continue to play that player. But, it can't be, if he's not able to do it physically, then I definitely think you have to take a step back there because, again, like I said, you have you have a good backup 3-tech in Onyemata. And so you don't need to, the good thing about Rankins is you don't need to rush him back with the guys that you have on the line. And, they have Mario Edwards there. We'll see what he is. We haven't really seen him in training camp and, he's been injured and hopefully he's able to, kind of play this Monday night against the Texans. But, to the second part of your question, if you get your 100% Rankins back, then you obviously have, another near Pro Bowl level player / pass rusher on the defensive line. And that significantly affects your defensive game planning because, every defensive coordinator in the NFL would love to keep, most guys in coverage, right? It's 11 players on the field. You rush 4, okay? They would love to keep the rest of those guys in coverage. And so the more coverage you have, the more you can do, right? The more space on the field you can cover, different coverages. You can do a lot of different things to just eat one extra defender in the secondary. So that's what you get with Sheldon Rankins, right? You get to change your defensive scheme. And, and maybe this is a little bit further down in the conversation, but if Lattimore is a good corner, now you can kind of cut the field into a third with that many defenders back there, and your entire defensive scheme is changed fundamentally. So, that's what you get with that type of player. And, it doesn't get spoken about a lot, but, him not being available is a big loss for the Saints because what's better than rolling out Cam and Davenport on the edge with Rankins and Onyemata in the middle, right? That's a good nickel pass rushing defensive line.
No question on that. I think towards the end of the year is definitely, and obviously the hope is always you're a better team at the end of the year than the beginning. But I think early in the season, even with Onyemata there, I'm very interested to see whether DA trusts the front 4 to get organic pressure, or if they're using, Onyemata. Obviously, Cam's going to do what Cam does. Cam, other than Aaron Donald, Cam is probably the most complete defensive end in football, or defensive lineman in football.
Yeah, I mean, one of the guys, you got DeMarcus Lawrence. He's a guy that you look at. Myles Garrett, Khalil Mack. But yeah, all those guys are.
No, those are all great players. But can they play? Can they play 3, 5, 7, and 9, all at a Pro Bowl level? I don't think they can. We know Cam can. Are you at your best putting Cam at the at a 3 technique? Well, no. But can he do it? We've seen him do it. And his dominance against the run, and obviously, fan bias, But I've always had an issue with a segment of Saints fans that always graded Cam just on his sack numbers, and it's like I don't think you understand that what his dominance against the run does to offensive game plans, and how much easier he makes a lot of people's jobs, and then just how damn good he is. I'm a huge Cam Jordan fan. I also love him because he's a goofball. Um, but yeah, no, I think you're right on the money there as far as Rankin's absence, and just kind of the impact that it can have. But I kind of want to take that and kind of segue into Davenport. So what is your what's your take on Marcus Davenport? I think it's probably the best place to really start there. Kind of what is your expectation for him, and then kind of what is your minimal acceptable floor with him? Like if he at least gives me this, I'm good. But if he can't at least give me that, I have a problem.
Davenport, that's a good. That would be the next guy that I would have brought up after Onyemata. So, the expectation of him, there has to be one and one only, is that he becomes a high level, complete defensive end for the New Orleans Saints. And, based on the compensation that they gave up for him and, where he was drafted, I think they're that's exactly how they feel. So that's what he has to be. Now, when does he get there? How long does it take for him to get there? That's another question, right? We don't have to go far. You can look, 3 spots down the line at Cam Jordan. He wasn't there his second year. So, and sometimes it takes time for guys to become, dominant. Some guys, they get it fast. I mean, I think Aaron Donald was one of those guys. J.J. Watt was one of those guys. Who else?
Myles Garrett, Von Miller.
Von Miller, that's the one I want to say. Von Miller was one of those guys.
Von had 15 as a rookie, something like that. It was ridiculous.
It was just ridiculous, yeah. And then some pass rushers become good later in their career. You look at guys like Justin Smith from the 49ers, right? He kind of played on a couple of teams, and he retired at the top of his game, which is crazy. I'm just such a huge fan. And so, with Davenport, I think the number one thing, and it's not the only thing, but the first thing is you want him to be better in 2019 than he was 2018. Right? That's the first thing that when I look at a young player, right, the arrow has to be pointing up, and what is the incline on the arrow, right? You don't want the arrow to be, it's like a flat, you don't want a flat bench, right? You want an incline, right? You want to be going up, and the higher is pointing up, the better it is for the player. And so with Davenport, I'm pretty sure he's going to be a better player this year. Just, he seems like the type of kid who wouldn't regress, and, some other things about him, I think he wants to be good. But how does it manifest? How does it manifest on the field? So, does he make a 10% improvement, 20? Is it 50? Is it 100%? Is he twice the player? So, I think we definitely need to keep an eye on that. I don't think we saw much in the preseason. I don't think that's a concern, really, because it's preseason and people overreact to it, and I absolutely do not. But, yeah, it's just I'm not a preseason.
We have a mantra on this podcast for the preseason. Other than injuries, nothing is as good as you think it is, and nothing's as bad as you think it is. Chill the fuck out. So I'm right there.
Yeah, it's the biggest magic trick in the NFL. So, that's obviously, would you have liked to see more? Yes. Every time you're on the field, you would like to see more out of every player, obviously. But Davenport, I don't think he really showed much. And, I thought I saw some things that maybe plagued him a little last year that was kind of still around. But, again, we'll see. So, I forget how many sacks he had last year. Was it 6? I think it was something like 6.
Yeah, it was something like it was in the ballpark. Like he had a hot stretch. He had like a 3-4 game stretch where I think he had like 4 or 5 across that span.
Yeah, the Vikings game where he got good and some other stuff.
Yeah, 2. I think he had like 2 forced fumbles, and then like he hurt his toe, and he hadn't refined his technique enough yet where he could lose half a step from that toe injury and still produce. But he still set the edge well, even late into the year.
Well, he's going to be potentially a dominant run player. Like he's a good run player out the box. right? You take stuff out the box and just plug it in and it starts working. He's an out the box run defender, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I said that when they drafted him. The pass rush is where you want to, see him, exhibit some growth. And so I think we saw it over the course of last year from when he started playing, first game or whatever, up until when he was injured. And you would like to think that, he's okay, he's healthy now, the injury's gone. Does he continue to exhibit, that growth that he did? And so that's the key. That's the number one thing that you want to see out of him. So, I don't know what I expect of him statistically. I really haven't thought of it, but my thought is, if I'm looking at it more analytically, is he getting more consistent pressure, right? Is he getting to the outside shoulder of an offensive tackle? How's his hand usage? Right. One problem that he had last year, and I saw it happen a couple of times this preseason, was he'll come off the snap and, he's trying to get the edge on the offensive tackle and his hands are in, I would say in the compromised position. I don't want to say wrong because I'm not a defensive line coach. And so what that allows to happen is the offensive tackle gets his hands inside and he punches Davenport before Davenport has a chance to make contact with him. The rep is over at that point. Right? I can play offensive tackle, and if I get a punch on you with your hands down, then the rep is over, right? Because you got inside position, and you got the first punch, so you draw them a little bit, and your hands are in position. That's so.
Yeah, you just set and stand your ground, no question.
Yeah, you anchor, right? And so how is he improving on things like that, right? How's his hand usage? What's his counter move, right? Is he a late in the down pass rusher? Is he early in the down pass rusher? Is he expanding his repertoire? It's just a lot of different things that you want to see from how is he using his power. He should be a dominant NFL speed to power rusher, right? Look at someone like, this may not be a name that excites people, but you look at someone, he just retired from the site, Brian Arakpo, right? He was a really good speed to power rusher, right?
Oh, especially early in his career.
Yes, and so that's something that I think Davenport, would like. And I'm pretty sure the Saints would like him to add to his game because the Saints like power rushers, right? DA always talks about power. I can't really think of anyone who they've drafted where it's like this quick twitched up dude or someone they signed that's like quick and twitchy like that. I don't even think they've
gotten a few. They just all were in mid to late rounds and they sucked.
Yeah, I mean they could have drafted Harold Landry last year and not drafted Davenport, right? And he was a good pass rusher coming out of I forget where he came. Was it UCLA or something like that?
I think wasn't it Boston College?
Yeah, BCU. Yeah, that's right. That was BC. And so
he was good last year. He got hurt again.
Yeah. And so that's how they, that's how they want their rushes to, to rush the passer. They want them to be rushing with power. And they want him because that's the quickest way to the quarterback is through the offensive tackle, not around him. So, that's kind of what I'm expecting from Davenport, right? Just getting better at the things you struggled with last year, and getting off the snap a little bit better. That's something that believe it or not, Sheldon Rankins had that problem his first year. If you go back and look at it, I think the San Francisco game was maybe the first one he came back. And then some games after that, his snap anticipation was just, I was like, man, I was scared. I was like, there's no way he's going to be able to rush the passer in the NFL like this. But Rankins and that's a coachable thing. And Rankins has gotten significantly better at that. So I thought that was something that Davenport showed that he also maybe need to improve on, in the upcoming year.
No, I think those are all really good points. I'll just kind of add on my quick thoughts on Marcus Davenport. I'm kind of two minds on him. Like, and I know we brought it up briefly, the whole two first thing. I kind of have a contrarian opinion just on that in general. I look at it as at the end of the day, I'm team draft good players. I understand that there's a cost to get a player, and there's an economy to that, and you can't overpay for mediocre or average players all the time. But I also look at it kind of like what I talked about earlier of net impact. I can afford to overpay a little bit for a solid to above average defensive end if I have a Cam Jordan, because my defensive line will still be really, really good because I have a Cam Jordan. Now, if I don't have a Cam Jordan, I need him to be a Myles Garrett. if I'm gonna put that kind of investment in him because my margin for error is so much lower. On the flip side, we got robbed of a Super Bowl and have a very short, probably 1 year, two at the most window to probably win another. And Davenport is going to be one of the key components to being able to have that opportunity. And that's not, he doesn't have to go out and be a 12 sack player. Like if he is, that's obviously fantastic, especially if he has this, similar performance against the run. But what I really want to see from him, and I think when you're looking at a player and you're looking at the development, you have to keep in mind their toolkit. Like, Austin Carr, I'm looking at his driving skills. Does he call Drew when his kids are acting up? Is he a good babysitter? Because he doesn't have an NFL toolkit, and I'm being a hater, but that's okay. But in seriousness, Marcus Davenport has a toolkit that very few guys in the league do. Just from a height, weight, speed, length, strength combination. His makeup is very unique, and not necessarily unique, but it's very rare, and that affords him a luxury where, like you were talking about earlier, there will be plays where he will not have the right technique and the tackle will get the punch in first and he will still win the rep because his gifts will exceed the opponent's technique. Now, it's not going to happen against an elite tackle, but at average to below average tackle, there are going to be plays where he's going to do the wrong thing and still win. And that's why you go get a superior athlete, because they have that margin for error. And so kind of keeping that in mind, the real big thing I'm looking at from Davenport, number one, you nailed number one off the top. He's got to anticipate the snap better. He had way too many plays where he was coming off slow. And he has a better margin for error than some. But, I mean, he had some of those where the ball was in the hands and his head was just starting to come up. So he's got to work on that. But the biggest thing I want to see him do is master one move. You got to work on them all, but have a go-to move and one counter that you can consistently execute. That's it. You don't have, Cam will do 50 moves in the game. He knows every counter. He's become a true technician at the position at this point. I don't expect Marcus to be that in year two. He also doesn't need to be that. You want him to be that, but he doesn't need to be that because he has that toolkit where he has the luxury that occasionally he gets to ignore technique and he just wins because he's that gifted. We saw a few of those plays last year. But if he can have one go-to, I don't care if it's a rip, pull, a swim, a bull rush. Knowing him, it's probably going to be a bull rush. But get that down and have one counter you can rely on when you get stopped. If he can do that and still play the run as well as he did last year, I think that his, kind of going back to what I talked about earlier, I think his net impact is going to be really, really huge for the team. I'm not going to predict what he'll do statistically because you never know if a quarterback's going to step up and the defensive tackle is going to steal a sack, or the reverse, guy's going to roll out and run right into Davenport's arms, things like that. He picks up an extra 3 or 4 cheap sacks in a year because Onyemata or Rankins chase somebody out of the hole. So I don't want to try to predict statistically, but just as far as what he is doing to the opposing offense, the chaos, the pressure, which is definitely one of the things you talked about a lot earlier, which I fully agree with, that he's generating. I think that's really the biggest thing I want to see. And Nielsen is, by all reports and also from what we've seen, a very good defensive line coach. So it's early in the year, but especially as the year goes on, I really want to see him have something that he feels like he can rely on and that he can trust and something he can play off of it. And if I see that, regardless of what, within reason, obviously, but regardless of what it says on the spreadsheet, I think he's going to be a very positive impact player for the defense if we can see those two things. So just kind of moving on to, a guy you mentioned earlier. Let's go ahead and take a look at the corner position. Your call. You're the guest. We can talk. We can talk the slot, or we can talk Eli Apple, or we can just kind of get the elephant in the room and talk about which Marshawn Lattimore is going to show up. So, Mr. Kevin, which one's it going to be?
Yeah, well, I think, when you talk cornerback position with the Saints, I don't think we even have to I don't think we have to get creative or cute or anything. I think that, it definitely starts with Marshawn Lattimore. And, I think when you talk about how much success the defense is going to have this year, I definitely think, his name should be, maybe one of the first or second names that comes up, because his play has such a large adverse effect on his defense that it's literally the difference maybe between them being a number one seed or being a wild card team, or number three, or maybe even getting to the Super Bowl or not. I mean, I spoke with Nick Underhill yesterday, and we recorded a pod. He kind of came back and did a pod, and so
that was a fun show. Y'all roasted the shit out of Ian, though.
Yeah, that was entertaining, man.
But no, that was a great show.
Yeah, we had fun with it. I mean, me and Nick talk all day, every day, so we kind of keep a little rapport going. But yeah, and so he said that if he was here, one of the main things he would have been looking at is what's going on with Lattimore, right? And now, hey, Nick is not here, and there's a difference in. I mean, look, I'm biased. He's like my brother, so there's a difference in quality and reporting, and that's just maybe that's a little biased there, but we just haven't. Yeah, we just haven't. Yeah, right. And so we just haven't heard as much as we should about his Lattimore this summer, right? And I think that's a big deal, right? Because if what a number one corner who can shut down a guy does for your defense is it just changes it fundamentally, right? It's kind of that simple, right? Look at I mean, staying with Underhill talking, he's with the Patriots now, and look at Stephon Gilmore. The Patriots have a good defense because of him, right? He's that good. He's a ridiculously good cornerback. He's probably the best in the NFL right now. And how closely can Lattimore get to, that level of play, right? That's the question. So I think it does start with him, right? He's, there's some quotes from Dennis Allen. I can pull him up. I got him saved in my notes somewhere. But he say we see him as the number one corner. He's going to be on the best receiver. He's going to get that assignment. We're going to challenge him every week. We see him as that guy, right? They telling you how they feel about this player, and he's saying the same thing about himself, right? And so he has to be that player for this defense to be good. And so if you get last year's Lattimore, you still have a good defense because you got good players around him, and he was a good corner last year. But if you get something close to the rookie year, and you would hope it would be better than that because he's a more seasoned player and he's healthy. Now you're talking about a potentially great defense because you got a dominant pass rusher. You got a really good linebacker, a really good free safety, another second corner who can play. You have all the pieces around you. When you add a dominant shutdown corner in that, everything changes. Everything changes. How you call a game, how you game plan, situational football, how you call your offense, how aggressive you're going to be. All of that changes when you have a player of that magnitude. So, yeah, I think it starts with Marshawn Lattimore and his play this season. And hey, it won't take us long to figure out what type of season is going to be. He gets Nook in week one.
And that might be the hardest one-on-one matchup in the NFL. I don't have Nuke as my top receiver in the NFL. I still think healthy Odell is the best receiver, and it's really a fight between him and Julio. But Nuke might be the hardest one-on-one matchup in the league. So we're really going to get to see if he's what he should be. I completely agree there. I agree. It doesn't take a lot of analysis to talk about Marshawn Lattimore. There's the potential, there's the need from the team, and there's the question about what are you going to get. And if he just delivers to the reasonable expectation, he will single-handedly make this probably a great defense. If nothing else, a good defense single-handedly just because of what he can do. And to your point about it in elite corner, and I'm going to ask you kind of a fun question because I know you've said before you're more of a pass rush impacts more than the coverage impacts kind of guy just philosophically. So I'm gonna be a little bit of a turd in a second, but I always look at it like this for shutdown corners, and it is very unique in the game of football. I think it's the only position that can do this. A elite shutdown corner changes the math of the game. And we'll talk linebackers in a little bit because I think the linebacker is the most criminally underrated position in the NFL today. Linebackers are one of the most impactful positions just because of the geometry of the game. But a corner literally changes the math of the game. A shutdown corner takes it from 11 on 11 to 11 on 10. And the reason I say 11 on 10 is not only is he erasing his man from the game plan, that guy does not have an opportunity to perform, but he still has the ability to play the ball and take it away. So not only am I taking away something from your side, I can still impact the game beyond that. And only the very best corners can do that. Change the math. And he has the ability to do that. The real question is going to be, can he do it? Now, just as a quick aside, you can only watch film for one of these two players for the rest of your life. Would you rather watch Bruce Smith or Deion Sanders?
Oh man,
I told you it was going to be
Smith.
a turd.
No, I didn't have to think hard about that. I watched Bruce Smith.
Really?
I mean, he's the all-time sack leader or something like that? Yeah, I don't think. I mean, people. I mean, I know. I'm not sure how old some of the listeners are, and people who just Bruce Smith was dangerous.
Like nasty.
Yeah, Bruce Smith was dangerous. Like I would watch him. I watch him all day. I mean, and listen, I love Deion. I mean, I probably seen more Deion than Bruce Smith because he played a little bit. I think I hope I'm not wrong about this. I remember him playing. I remember Bruce Smith retiring before Deion, right? And so, and I think that, but I just in my head I seem to remember watching Deion more recently than Bruce Smith. It would be nice if, just a side note, it would be nice if NFL they just put up their archives of like old games. If they just expanded Game Rewind to have like old games, I would not have a life. But I would
up for free. Like, how stupid is it that they don't just make that available as a streaming service you can pay like $10 a month for?
Hey man, it's
like, y'all don't like money?
Call Miss Benson and tell her to hook that
up. But yeah, no,
I would.
I kind of agree with you, but it was a trick question because the correct answer is Reggie White.
I mean, hey, look, I think that Bruce Smith is right there. Maybe like that man was different. Like he was just different, and Reggie White was too. They those guys. I mean, he's probably like 280 or something, just ridiculous. But again, to the point about Lattimore is just he, you want to see him, just take that next step. But also, the other corner is another wild card too. Eli Apple he's a wild card in a different way than Lattimore, right? Lattimore, I think we know he's a good corner. At this point, he's going to be good. He may have a bad game here or there, but he's going to be a good NFL player. And I would even venture out to say a consistently good NFL player. Apple's a little different, right? Because his play, he is just peaks and valleys, right? When he's good, he is, let's not forget he was a top 10 pick. So he has a skill set of a shutdown corner, right? And when he's, he's up in your face and he's pressing you and he's aggressive, he's not Lattimore, but the gap it's not a gaping hole between their skill sets.
As long as the ball is in the air, he's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, and so what's his play going to be, right? I mean, it definitely starts with Lattimore because he's one of those guys, right? It's only like 5 or 6 of those in the NFL, and Lattimore is one of them when he wants to be. But Apple is, he can be, I can see a scenario where, Apple becomes a really good player and he can be someone's, he has the potential to be someone's number one corner. Like he's that good of a skill set, and his highs are that high. So, it's really hard to project the Saints defense in some way, because what if Lattimore is rookie Lattimore, but Eli Apple goes back to Giants Apple, right? Or what if Lattimore is last year's Lattimore and Eli Apple takes a step up? What if both of them are not good? What if both of them play the best football of their lives, right?
Yeah.
And
there's a rabbit hole.
You can say that about.
What's wrong with your first scenario? What if we get rookie level Lattimore? We get a lot of Giants Eli Apple, but we also get rookie level Marcus Williams.
Teams are going to attack. Marcus Williams is going to be doing a lot of bracketing.
Yeah.
Right. He's going to have
to
do a lot of bracket coverage.
As a rookie, I might be okay with Eli Apple giving up some plays. Go feed Marcus.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think if you get rookie year Lattimore, then yeah, you can live with that, right? Because you can just bracket a player, right? You can just cut the underneath route, and Apple, as long as he's smart enough to know if his help is underneath and he plays over the top, then you're good, right? And so, yeah, I think, listen, the shutdown corner, again, the shutdown corner is it's your trump card, right? It's your cheat code, right? It's your rewind button. It's like the difference between watching something live with the DVR and without a DVR. If you missed a play, it's all good, man. Just hit the back button. You can watch it again, right? If you if you don't have the shutdown corner, then it's like watching on like DirecTV now. You missed it, then it's tough luck. I say that because my buddy works for AT&T, and I tried to rewind the TV the other day, and it didn't work. And I was like, man, you ain't got a DVR? It's like, man, but yeah, he streams everything. So yeah, I think that position, it has a few different ways it can go. Now it's always like in the middle somewhere, right? We have these we talk so definitively in football. Oh, is he going to be good or bad? And it's like, well, football is not really that simple, right? But we just kind of do it for the sake of discussion. But you're just going to be somewhere in the middle. Like if Lattimore gives up 8 for 80 against Hopkins, is that good or bad, right? I don't think there's really an answer to that question, because there's no context to it, right? People are saying like, oh, he gave up 80. That was a bad game. But in reality, maybe he didn't give up any third downs. That's a really good game.
Kevin, are you telling me that context matters?
Hey, man. Yeah, look.
Mind blown.
Yeah, and I'm a film junkie, man. So like when someone says something and it's like wrong, I'm like, oh gosh, like I want to just football fight you. So yeah, it's really.
I totally get it.
Yeah, it's so much new. So football is very nuanced. It's
yes.
And there's some things that like I'm trying to grasp about the game, and I'm not even me, because I'm not even a football guy. Like I don't do it for a living, but
still trying to learn.
Yeah, but there's some stuff that I'm like. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, like Nick watched every pass Drew ever threw. He needs medication and help, and there's things he's trying to learn. So, just
and just like pattern matching, matching to me is like just that's one of the most like how do you like just trying to learn, like if you watch the Chicago Bears defense, right, or you can go back and watch the old 49ers defense, watch the Broncos defense this year.
I hate him with respect, but I hate Fangio so much.
Oh, he's the best defensive coordinator of this generation.
Oh, it's not close.
He's ridiculous. So like he pattern matches and he plays zone coverage, but with matchup concepts. And it's ridiculously hard to beat. And no one else calls it like him. And if you think the Bears defense is going to be just as good this year, then you must got some future crystal ball that's telling you what's going on, because they lost the best defensive coordinator that they could possibly have. Right. And so it's just those things, and this is a football conversation. We're totally off subject here, but like, that's the nuance of football. Yeah, when you play against they're going to play against Dan Quinn, right? He's calling the Falcons defensive plays this year. Is he still a predominantly cover 1, cover 3 guy? Right? How has he evolved since he's coached Seattle's defense? Right? What's the update on him? Right? So when you look at football, it's like, oh, how is Lattimore going to play? Well, DA plays a lot of different defenses. The Saints don't really have this scheme. Like, what's the Saints scheme? No one knows. You can't answer it. They literally play everything.
Like crap.
Right? They disguise they disguise it, but it's relatively simple.
See what covers they're going to play.
Yeah. And so,
I don't mean that in a bad way, but DA very similar on defense to Sean Payton from a philosophical standpoint of, I want to make you guess. I want us to know exactly what we're doing, but I want you to not have a clue. I want you to think he could try anything, and that's my edge. And
he just gets to it a little bit different than he'll get to his coverages a little different. But I mean, they're not. If you know football, coverage is cover 1, cover 2, cover 3, cover 4, cover 6.
Read the mic, read the safety, read the end.
Right, yeah, those coverage, right? So you got cover 1 is obviously single high safety, man on the outside. Cover 3 is the zone with you guys coming back. 4 is quarters. 2, we know what 2 is. 2 is singles, split high safeties, and then cover 6 is cover 4 on one side, cover 2 on the other. So once you learn the coverages, right, then things kind of start making a little bit more sense. But then you get into guys like Fangio where they change them up and they match them differently, and it's just, again, right. When you in each time a team plays, there's 2 different concepts that kind of clash, and so that's kind of like where the nuance in football kind of becomes fun and exciting, because it's to say this guy had a bad game, but the yardage that he gave up doesn't really reflect the fact that he stopped them in all this necessarily all the situations, all the situational football.
You're systematically giving up certain things to prevent worse things, because that's what the opposition is geared to do. Like, I'm going to let you go we've done this to Julio a bunch of times. I'm going to let you get the underneath stuff, and you're going to rack up a high yardage total, but between the 20s, you're going to rack up all those yards, but within the 20s, you're not going to do anything, because we're expecting that, hey, if we force you to kick field goals, we're going to beat the brakes off you. Like,
yep.
And then there's nuance and strategy there, and sometimes you're accepting a loss in one area to force them to focus on that spot so that you can protect against other deficiencies, other places. And yeah, I mean, this is a whole rabbit hole we could have a lot of fun going down, but just to kind of bring us back a little bit, as much fun as I think we're having, I couldn't agree more on Eli Apple being a wild card. Here's the only thing I'll say on Eli Apple. If Eli Apple played with half the swagger that his mom has, he would never give up a pass. And I say that with a ton of love and respect. I absolutely love Annie Apple's Twitter account. She's got an amazing story. She's super, super cool. Just like as a fan mom, he also has to get so many damn jokes from his teammates in the locker room about his mom, because she is reckless and does not care. But like, jokes aside, he is one of those players, and we kind of talked about another one in the pre-show that Ian and I talked about last week. Some guys seem to play with a confidence and a self-assurance, and some guys, even though they have the toolkit that says that I should play with that, I know I'm the better athlete 9 times out of 10. I know I can cover you, but I don't always play like I know I can cover you. And Eli Apple has always been one of those guys where when he's good, and I remember Nick and you talked about this on the podcast last year when we first traded for him, when he's good, when he is confident in playing his game, he is borderline, if not fully elite. I think the question for him this year is all going to be, is the comfort level with the teammates, the all Ohio State D, but then also, beyond that, the confidence he has in himself, the confidence in the coaches. It's one of Sean Payton's favorite quotes. Confidence is, great time for me to have a brain fart. But basically, it's repeated successful performance is. I butchered the quote, but everybody knows what I meant.
Confidence comes from demonstrated ability. That's what I always say.
Yeah. That it's much better quote when you say it right, folks. But he had, especially towards the end of the year last year, he put a lot of really good stuff on tape. And if I'm his coaches, I'm in his ear all off season. I'm not focusing as much on the things that he didn't do well, even though I'm coaching him towards those. I'm looking at a player like that and going, this is a guy who can get in his own head. You know what you did wrong. You probably spend more time focusing on what you did wrong than you should. I'm going to push you back towards, here's the things that you did right, and I'm going to try to push you to repeat that instead of avoid the things that you did wrong, knowing that it's really two sides of the same coin. If I always try to do the right thing, I will invariably not do the wrong thing. And for some guys, it's the opposite. They always think they're great. You got to go, yeah, well, you messed up here, 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 and here. Please don't do those. So some of that just comes down to coaching and understanding the players. But we're kind of starting our way here. We're working our way out. I'm going to save my favorite position group personally on defense for last. So before we get to the field generals, let's talk the safety position, because we got two guys here who, I mean, you want to talk about the narrative around two players flipping in a year to a year and a half. Saints Twitter hated Von Bell, and Marcus Williams was the next, and I still can't believe Drew let this name come out his damn mouth. The next Ed Reed. And then now you go to this year and it's completely flipped. And Von Bell is the new honey badger, and Marcus Williams doesn't belong in the NFL. And as you said earlier, reality is a lot closer to the middle. But I want to start with Von Bell, because I think he is really, we talked about growth, obviously with Lattimore and with Davenport and some of these other young guys. But I fully believe that of all the young guys on the roster right now, the one who has shown the most growth over the last couple of years is Von Bell. And especially, it's not like he's not like a freak athlete at free safety, or sorry, at strong safety. I mean, he's a good athlete, but his anticipation and the way he is reading and reacting to things, this man is flying around the field. So am I hyping him too much, or are you kind of on the same boat I'm on, where this guy really could be an impact player for us this year?
Well, I think, I mean, the good news is that, there's the he has a lot of film out there to prove that, one way factually wrong, or, is that's factually wrong even a word, right? But it's factual or not. And I think it's just factual. He has been playing well, right? When you look at, his play last year, in fact, if you just take it a step back further than that, from his rookie year to, his next year in the league to last year, he's continued to show growth every year. And so, that's a good thing, right? I mean, I remember last year, they brought in Kirk Coleman to kind of challenge his spot. I mean, that's exactly what happened, at least in my eyes, right? And so, and I
into a cameraman.
Yeah, and then Sean Payton even said, "Hey, man, he mentioned like the mental part of the game for him." So he's clearly playing better now. I think the film shows that. It's all over the film. I mean, the guy's, he seems like he's a leader a little bit more now. He seems like he's more vocal, in the secondary from everything that we're hearing. He's taking the game. The mental part of his game is, taking a step forward. So yeah. I think Von Bell is, he's a big part of the secondary this year, and people writing it off like he's gone after this year, which he may or may not be. I don't know, but for now, my guess is that the Saints, see him as an important part of the defense, just based on, what he can do. He can play high if he needs to. He can play in the box. He can cover, tight ends. And so yeah, I mean, I definitely think Von Bell is a player for the Saints.
No, I mean, I fully agree. I think my thing with him, and the thing I'm going to be watching this year, and this is a luxury. I love having it. He's gotten to the point where I trust him to be a good player. I don't question it anymore. To me, to be a great player, you can be a great player just through raw consistency. If you were just that guy that literally never makes a mistake and is already in the right spot, you can be a great player with that. But generally speaking, a great player is someone who has impact beyond normal expectation. And the thing I want to see from Vaughn is, can he make some big plays? And I don't just mean a sack, because he's a good blitzer, or a tackle in the backfield, which are big plays. I'm not discounting them at all, but forcing fumbles, getting some interceptions. Can he be an impact player? Because I think that's going to be the thing. Number one, obviously, it's a huge thing for this defense. We have a incredibly talented, very deep defense. But when you're able to take the ball away, it takes you to another level. But beyond that, looking at his future and potentially being with the Saints, if he becomes a guy who makes plays and punishes opponents for their mistakes, I think that's going to be the difference for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think he has a knack for, maybe creating a forced fumble. I think he's created a couple of those, but I think he's a safety, right? Next step in this game is, getting some interceptions. I don't think he has a career interception as a pro, if I remember correctly. So,
but he has not caught anything in the pros.
Yeah, and as a safety, the thing is your eyes are on the ball, right? As a Saints play a lot of man, and in man you have to, if you're playing man, it's hard to intercept the ball because your eyes are more focused on the guy in the route, the wide receiver, the tight end, whoever you're covering. But if you're a safety, a lot of times your eyes are on the ball, and so it's just a little weird that he's been in the league 3 years, but no, this is his third year. No, yeah, this is his fourth year. Excuse me. Yeah, where is it his fourth year? Is his man?
I think it's his
that
third.
Was the 2016 draft, was it?
Yeah, because I think
17 was that. Yeah. So okay, man, that's time flies, man. But yeah, so I you would like to, it is his 30, I think. So yeah, you would like to see that change because impact safeties intercept the ball, and he needs to add that. But for the most part, I would say that strong safety is a strength of this defense with Von Bell there.
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, we'll keep the next guy short just because we could really do a whole podcast just addressing the reality and the myths, positive and negative, about Marcus Williams. But here's really what I look at with him. When you're grading, and every coach, every film junkie will tell you, safety's arguably the hardest position to grade because you have to know the calls, the coverages. There's a lot of information that's not available to you that can drastically affect whether or not someone did their job right. Marcus Williams didn't put up the same number of interceptions last year as he did as a rookie. There were definitely some times where he didn't play with the same aggressiveness and confidence. I did see that he at times definitely played not to make a mistake instead of to make a play. I would still argue, and I'll probably be in the minority on this, but I would still argue I think he was a better player in his second year than he was as a rookie. He didn't have a better impact, and they're not the same thing, but I thought he made fewer mistakes. I thought he prevented a lot more big plays. But I would really like to see in his third year him put the two together. Now, some of that just comes down to opportunity. You got to get teams that'll take the chances, that'll throw down on you, that'll, tip passes, things like that. I mean, he had a couple his rookie year. I think he had one that he caught off somebody else. He had two the final game against Jameis, who loves to give the ball away. So like there's some things that have to go your way, but I think he was a lot better last year than fans give him credit for. But I would really love to see him, if he can put year one and year two together in year three, I think he can still be a very special player. What do you think on him? And then we'll get ready.
Yeah, I mean, with Williams, the question, was he a better player which year? Yeah, I don't really know the answer to that. I don't even know how to quantify it. I do know that the Saints, they see him as an important part of the defense, right? And so, they're really high on him, and I can tell you, I can tell you for sure that they're still very high on him, and they still see him as that type of player, and they think he's a special young player, and they have high hopes for him. So, a lot of the things that you see with safeties, it kind of, casual fans may not necessarily catch it, but it's a lot that goes into that position, right? When you look at, his play last year, well, you could make a case, well, at least for the first part of the year, the corner play wasn't as good, right? If your corner play isn't good, then that affects you as a safety, right? Is his help shifted to one side of the field? Is he really just reading the quarterback instead of trying to help a guy? Like you said, there's situations that come up on certain plays, and you sometimes the ball find you, sometimes it don't. So, I don't think there's a really big difference between year one Marcus Williams and year two Marcus Williams. Just when you look at it schematically, I thought maybe a few things in coverage I did see where, maybe he got beaten or a guy got, his step out of position here and there. But, then he was still a second-year player, right? We're not talking about a vet. And so those things are going to happen. They still happen to veteran safeties. So, yeah, I think at the end of the day, Marcus Williams is again, he's a crucial part of this defense. And I think they're looking for him to have a big year. And if he does, then that's a huge boost to an already, talented set of guys they have on the decent defensive side of the ball.
No question. So like I said before, linebacker is my favorite defensive position. Part of it is just I love the concept of the position, the geometry of the position. You're literally in the heart of the defense. The ranginess, you can go downhill, you can cover. There's so many things that the great linebackers can do. Now, for most of my tenure as a Saints fan, I was not blessed with getting to watch great linebacker play. I got to watch the David Hawthorns and the Curtis Loftons and I don't know who that guy is, but someone please shoot him. At one point, Craig Robertson was our best linebacker, which Craig is a awesome depth player, a great special teams player from all the things we've ever heard, a great teammate. But if he is a starting linebacker for you, you have problems at linebacker. And then last year, all of a sudden, that changed. And I really look at our linebacker position, and I don't want to see what your thought on it is to see if you kind of see it differently. But I really look at it. I look at it as we have two linebacker groups. We have a group of guys. They're not lunch pail guys in like the way the media uses it, like, oh well, he just shows up to work. They're not like Scott Shanley. So they can make plays. Klein's a guy like that. Klein makes a lot more plays than people give him credit for. But he's not like an elite linebacker. I think Alonzo's going to be the same way. Anzalone has to be healthy again, but also he's the only guy from that group that could become like a real elite, high level linebacker. You have a bunch of guys there that don't make mistakes and they don't hurt you, and they make the plays they're asked to. And then you have the other guy. I think we would both agree that Marshawn Lattimore is the most important player for this defense. Because, like we talked earlier, what a shutdown corner does for your defense just can't be replicated anywhere else. I would personally argue Demario Davis is the second most important player for this defense, especially in today's NFL. His ability to blitz, his consistency with tackling, his intelligence. But the one thing that he brings that we haven't had really since Vilma, he has absolutely ridiculous range. And his ability to erase stretch plays and screens and throws out into the flats, which have murdered us for years, I think that changed the identity of the defense and the floor of the defense more than any player other than Marshawn Lattimore. And I might argue he changes it even more than Marshawn. Not that he's more important, but just being able to erase that entire package on a consistent basis is so huge for us. What are your thoughts on the linebackers for the year?
Yeah, I think the Saints, I think they feel good about their linebackers. You know, if I was Mike Nolan, I wouldn't, I would be sitting there smiling, looking at the guys I'm coaching in that room. I think you're right. It starts with Davis. You know, he's just a good player. I don't really, it's really hard to say a lot about him. He's just good, right? He plays the run, he plays the pass, he blitz, he's smart, he's a leader. He's woke, and so it's like,
Love it.
Yeah, what can you say about the guy that's not good? So, I definitely, I think it starts with him, and I think they see it that way. It's tricky, right? I mean, he kind of plays the Mike, the Will. I mean, he kind of, their linebackers are somewhat interchangeable when you look at them, which is interesting. I'm not sure a lot of teams, you know, can play their linebackers like that. So, that's obviously a good thing that they have going. But yeah, I think I made a point. I think Davis may have been, you can make a case that him and Rankins, were tied for the second best player on the defense last year. And someone says Davis was number 2. Smart football people could definitely have that opinion. So yeah, it's just, and it's easy to remember the times when the Saints couldn't cover the passes in the flats, and that has everything to do with the defense. And one thing I would note is that sometimes when you see a corner maybe giving up a route, and it'll look like it's the cornerback's fault, it could be on the linebacker. I know that was the case with Brandon Browner in some cases, where and that guy's life is, it's changed a little bit since he was in football. But when he was playing,
Just a little.
yeah. I mean, it's just crazy stuff, man. But yeah, since it was definitely some of his struggles were on some of the linebackers, and so yeah, I mean, those guys. I mean, Davis, they have now, that the guys are not going to be able to attack the flats in the Saints because they're just going to get a 1 yard, 2 yard gain, or if not attack a floss with the speed and intelligence that Davis plays with. And obviously the next guy you would speak about is Anzalone, and you can kind of say a lot of the same things about him. He's a younger player. He's not experienced. He probably doesn't see things as quickly as Davis. He's ridiculously athletic, and maybe not high in athletic, but definitely above average and good enough for the position. And again, he brings a lot of the same things. He can cover, he can play the run. It would be good to see him expand his game as a blitzer a little bit more, be a little bit more aggressive in that area. But when you look at how the game is played today, the type of players that you need to be in the current NFL, you need fast players, right? You need guys who can, get to the ball and stop the ball carrier. That's important. Those big, slow, lumbering linebackers, Curtis Lofton, like you mentioned, who, he was good at one point in his career, but, those guys, they typically, they, at least if they're playing, they're base down players. And so yeah, I mean, you got to feel good about the linebackers. And even Klein has been a really good, solid player for the Saints. And he had a good year last year.
Coach's son. I'm just having
Huh?
fun.
Yeah, I didn't hear you. But yeah, and so
Sneaky athletic coach's son.
oh yeah.
Klein isn't ever going to get confused for Luke Kuechly, but he can move a little bit, and he's
he's a good player. I mean, listen, he's your third linebacker, and he's your starting Sam, and you can do a lot worse, right? You can do a lot worse. So if you're the Saints, you feel good about the second level of your defense because when you look at a good defense, good defenses are good down the middle, right? It's just if you draw all the players on the football field, the offense and the defense has to be good down the middle. Quarterback, center, defensive interior, Mike, free safety, right? Those are the guys who's making the call. The quarterback calls the plays. Center makes the line calls. Sometimes the defensive end the defensive tackle makes the defensive calls sometimes, but the Mike does it, maybe more often than not. But I know Rankins did that.
Did it pretty consistently.
Yeah, Rankins did it. The linebacker, the Mike he calls the defensive plays in general, and then the safety makes the coverage calls right down the middle of the defense, and the offense is the same. And so overall, when you're looking at the same team, they have that on both sides of the ball, and that's a sign of a good team.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. So we'll wrap it up with this. This will be the last thing, and then we'll let you get out of here. Want to thank you again for taking some time. I know it's a little late at night, folks. We're recording, but Kevin is a good, generous soul, and is putting up with my blabbermouth ass. So we're gonna
Oh,
wrap
good,
things
man.
up here. I want you to give me your prediction. We've seen no games that matter, so I just want your prediction for the Saints 2019 defense.
They're good. That's it. They're gonna be a good defense. Hey, listen, man. Ian is the hot take king.
I mean,
That's all I got.
you ain't gotta
I
give
think
me
they're
like
gonna be a good defense. I think they're gonna be good situationally. I think they're gonna be a good situational
okay.
defense.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
Yeah. Don't look at the
I know you're
statistics.
careful with your words, so
Well, don't
I'll
look
let.
at the reason I say it is because it's like it is not because man, I don't have enough time to explain it completely. But if I say they're going to be top 5, then what does that mean, right? And so I think when you look at the Saints situationally, right? Can they stop the run when they need to stop the run? Can they get off the field on third downs? Can they force field goals and not touchdowns in the red zone, right? So I think when you look at situational football and the things that are important, the 7 or 8 plays that require a team to win a game, I think that's where you're going to see the Saints defense shine. And so, that's what I'm looking for them this year. Statistics, I don't know defensive rankings. I couldn't tell you who was number 1, who was number 32 defense. I don't think it matters. I think I think what's important is, the nuance.
I think flawed, so I agree with you on that.
Yeah, the nuance and the details about how the defense plays each game. I think that's going to be important. I mean, you can give up 32 points and have a good defensive game if you stop guys when it matters the most, in my opinion. Now, it's not.
Did you go against the Chiefs, who are averaging 45, and you held them to 32?
Exactly my point.
You beat them 51-35. Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, there's a lot more nuance there than just goes into the numbers. Here's what I'll say, and I'll be a little, just a tad more hot takey than you, but I'm in the same vein of I'm not going to predict a number of sacks or a ranking or something like that because it's there's too many variables that don't really tell the whole picture. I'll say this. I believe that the defense will be the most consistent and reliable unit for the Saints in 2019. Not necessarily the best. I think the offense will have better peaks. I think special teams will have the fewest valleys. But I think when you look at it game to game, the defense is going to do the fewest things that you would expect to cost you games. I think they're going to have the fewest times where you're looking at when you expect them to be the better unit, they will be the better unit. And that's kind of really what I look at is if you're looking at a 16 game season and then hopefully 3 games in the playoffs, if I can rely on my defense, kind of what you're saying, be good sound situational football, but I know what I'm going to get week in and week out. It makes it a lot easier to game plan, and it also helps you, my opinion, it makes it a lot easier to protect Drew. Especially early in games. You don't have to force, the plays downfield or, a 5-step drop and you get him hit against a really good pass rush a few times that you don't need to. You don't have to take those chances. You don't have to, take the extra go on 4th down early in the game or do the fake punt or those things. Not that you won't do those things, but you're not in a position where we were a few years ago where you pretty much had to take those risks and those chances to have a chance because the defense might have a great game and they might be cheeks. I think this unit is going to be extremely reliable, and I think they have a chance to be one of the 4 best defenses in the NFL, regardless of what the rankings are. By the end of the year, I think they have a chance to go into the playoffs as one of the 4 defenses. You look at them and go, I really don't want to play them. And I think it's really hard to have a better viewpoint being objective than that. Like, unless I'm rolling in with the 2000 Ravens defense, which is the greatest defense in NFL history, it's pretty hard to beat as far as I'm concerned. So I'm fairly optimistic about him.
Hey, yo, the Saints is going